Welcome back, fantastic friends and fans, to the 7th episode of the Fancast at 4 podcast. My name is Dan Bettenhausen, and I'm your host as we will venture into the what-ifs of Marvel's first family, who will soon be appearing in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. With Spider-Man director Jon Watts set to direct the MCU's Fantastic Four. Wait, hold on. I'm just getting word that as of Friday, April 29th, Jon Watts has actually stepped down as director of the Fantastic Four movie. And with spending nearly a decade on the Spider-Man films, I can certainly appreciate the desire to take a break. But listeners and guests, past, present, and future, we here at the Fancast at 4 podcast have an opportunity on our hands. It is quite possibly our destiny to provide as many directing options and pitches to Kevin Feige and Marvel Studios. I believe in us. We have already provided them with so many amazing ideas so far, I think we can keep it going. With that said, let's dive right in and meet this episode's guest and see what they have in store for us. This week, I'm excited to have my friend Allison Salamone on this episode. You can see and listen to Allison on a wide variety of YouTube shows reviewing, reacting, and commenting on movies. She has a few projects in the work herself. Allison,
Great.
Welcome to the podcast. Please share with our listeners a little bit about yourself.
Hi, Dan. Thanks for having me on. I'm really excited to be here.
I'm glad.
This is so fun. Currently, for my day job, I work as a behavior analyst, working with individuals, right now, little ones with autism spectrum disorder and other intellectual disabilities, which brought me into, I was doing a podcast called Behavior Geekology. We have a couple episodes up over on, oh, thank you. That was my first foray into audio podcasting myself. So those are over on Flick and Reel Fancast. And now I'm in the works of starting a fun little thing, project, would you call it You've Never Seen It? Which is going to be my journey to never hear those words again, because I feel like I hear them all the time.
Sounds like an impossible task.
It does, but I think it would be, it wouldn't bother me as much if it wasn't for the fact that I haven't seen things like When Harry Met Sally, Sleepless in Seattle.
Okay, that one I've seen. I mean, don't feel too bad. I've never seen When Harry Met Sally either. So
okay, perfect. There we go.
I mean, I've seen many movies, but that's one. And with that said, not to get too ahead of myself, I had to watch a lot of movies this week for this director because I've maybe only ever seen one or two movies prior to you wanting to do this director as the episode.
And the good thing about this director, though, I feel is it's even if you have to go back and watch a bunch, it's not as arduous of a task as saying like going back and watching a ton of Steven Spielberg, because all of his movies, the majority of them are like 90 minutes.
Right. Yeah. I felt it felt way less daunting going through and watching a handful of movies this week while I was working. But that's neither here nor there. But before we get into the director, going back to You've Never Seen It, are there any films you are really looking forward to finally getting a chance to force yourself to watch?
Yeah. So one of them that I'm going to have coming up that I'm having to really sit down and watch is Blade Runner. I'm going to be super excited for that episode. I got a couple of really good guests on that one, as well as Office Space and the Burbs is another one. Okay. I just hear so much about it. The Perks of Being a Wallflower, someone else wants to watch. The other two of the Linklater before trilogies. I saw the first one, but never saw the other two. I got a bunch of stuff that's going to be, I'm really excited to expand my movie knowledge and finally not lie.
I mean, we here on the Fancast at 4 podcast certainly promote honesty and being nice, because apparently, as I've learned yesterday, and this is probably going to make no sense to anyone, being nice means being honest. So we here at the Fancast at 4 podcast endorse niceness and honesty.
I love it.
Good. I am very excited. I know I've told you a movie I'm hoping to potentially slip in and be a guest on.
Absolutely. It's reserved. It's yours.
Woo! So I am excited to see how this goes. I'm excited to see what the format of the show is too. I don't want to spoil anything. Do you have an idea of how you're going to break down the show?
Yeah, actually I do. One of the really fun things I think we're going to do is, before I even watch the movie, I'm just going to record what I think it's about or what I know of it going into it, and then watch it. And then my whole point of having this podcast for You've Never Seen It is to really connect with other people on why this movie, like what is it that that resonates with you? What is it that makes you, when you hear that I've never seen it, makes you angry that I've never seen it, or upset, or just in disbelief? And that's why I'm making sure the guests that I have on, I'm not just giving them any random movie. I'm letting them choose from what I have. And if it's not something that they're seeing on there, I'm completely open for suggestions. So we're going to have the movies that the Stand By Me's, I'm waiting to see which friend of mine is monstrous enough to make me watch Schindler's List is really what I'm waiting for. That's the big one. But these are just classic films. And I want the people that I'm talking with about them to have a reason that they love them so much. So I can understand more, because I think that's something really important about film, is it really brings a lot of people together. This director really brought my husband and I together, because this is his favorite director. And I've even kind of slept on a lot of his movies until the last couple of years, and sitting down and watching them with him, I think has been really meaningful to him because of how much he loves who we're talking about today. So that's going to be kind of the gist of it, is talking through with my guest, going over behind the scenes stuff about the films, talking about the different filmographies after that of the director, actors, things like that, what other films they love from that director, this actor. And then we're going to end it by rating and reviewing it on my Letterboxd.
Awesome. No, sounds great. Well, I think that was a great segue into getting back into what we were doing on the show. As much as I love promoting
the gist of the show,
the
real show,
and her projects, we do have a goal here, and I think we should get back on track.
Great segue, Dan.
Thank you. So we are talking about a director and how they would cast a Fantastic Four movie and then eventually pitch it. So this director, I'm excited because, as I mentioned before, it was a blind spot. And I will credit Allison, because I probably would not have watched these movies if it weren't for this podcast. But this director does have 20 feature-length directorial credits in his filmography. He's an American director who also composes a lot of scores for his films. While this director has worked in many genres, he is most associated for directing horror and science fiction films. He's even considered one of the greatest horror film masters. With some exceptions, many of this director's films were initially commercial and critical failures, but have since garnered cult classic status. The director we are focusing on this week is the one and only John Carpenter. What drew you to want to cast a film around John Carpenter's filmography?
I thought it would be fun. It's definitely different. He hasn't done a feature-length film since Ghosts of Mars, I want to say. I think that was the last one that he did. He's also the new film Firestarter that's coming out. He's the composer for. So my hope is, because he's getting back into composing feature length, that we might get another Carpenter film down the road. Yeah. And maybe after hearing this, Marvel or the MCU and Kevin Feige will be like, why don't we reach out to John Carpenter? So, and we got Sam Raimi doing the Multiverse of Madness. Like, why can't, right?
So there was a 2010 film called The Ward that he directed.
That was a TV movie, I believe.
Right. But yeah, I'm still calling them. They're on his full feature-length filmography. There are a few. So that got thrown in the number because...
That was the last one. Yeah. So...
I'm a research team of one.
Exactly. So I'm hoping maybe Mr. Carpenter is listening and he'll understand and he'll hear my plea to come back and do another movie.
Well, while we are talking about movies that he may do, I want to now talk about the movies he has done and get into our segment called 4 Fantastic Films, where we discuss 4 of our favorite, or at least films that we find very interesting. So Allison, what are your 4 favorite, or at least 4 films that you do want to discuss that John Carpenter had directed?
My 4 favorite, if we're going to go for number 4, I think it's a super important seminal film because it created a full genre of slasher movies, and that's Halloween. Yeah. Without Halloween, you're not getting any. Yeah. Number 4, because I'm also not a bit. It's so funny that I chose this director, because I'm not a huge horror fan, but I've gotten better with the slasher films. So, and understanding the importance of a movie like Halloween and what it created and what it started has really helped me be able to sit back and watch it.
Oh yeah, I'm a big old wuss. I don't like horror films. Yeah. Like I respect and appreciate them for what they are and how they are, especially now, how they're starting to get, I'll say, better. Not that,
Yeah.
like I said, there certainly, like, there are merits to a lot of the older classics, but I think it's sorry for this tangent, we are starting to get a lot more respect for the genre, and it's starting to show in the filmmaking. Do I want to see those films? Most of the time, no, but I will respect them.
I mean, but without Halloween, there's no Scream, right? Without
Right.
Halloween, there's no Jason. There's none of these films without him getting this very small budget and being like, it's fine, I can make it work because I'll do all the composing, I'll write it, I'll direct it, you know, which is what makes him so incredible and so versatile.
Horror renaissance man. I mean, it's crazy.
Yes. Number 3, I have They Live with Roddy Piper and Keith David. Again, it's such a fun movie. Everyone knows the line, I'm here to kick ass and chew bubblegum, and I'm all out of bubblegum. I love so much. It just kicks the door in. And it's such a good satire to how it still holds up to this day with the us getting the subliminal messages of corporate America and corporate greed and all of that. So I feel like it's very ahead of its time. My next one is The Thing, and that's simply because that movie was made in 1982, and the practical effects that were used in it was all practical effects, all ahead of its time. Kurt Russell is incredible. He's so fun when he gets mad at the chess game for winning on the computer, and he just pours his bottle of whiskey all over it and calls it the B word. I'm like, okay, sir. There it is.
Yeah. So The Thing is one I admit I watched this week for the first time, and I would have hated watching it in the theater. I would have been out the door, not because it was bad, but I would have been crying.
It's scary. I watched it for the first time a couple of years ago, and it was after being convinced by Frank to watch it because it's Carpenter's his favorite. So it was like, he was like, you have to watch it for the practical effects of it and for this. And I sucked it up and I did it. And I'm really glad I did, because I think it's the suspense. It's fantastic. Absolutely amazing.
And you got a first sound effect too. You will be hearing our da-da-da-da sound effect pretty soon. The Thing is certainly on my list, and I don't plan on going through. I will go quickly through my list once we get to it, but yeah, the practical effects were astounding and just straight up gross. Like good gross for the movie, but holy crap, what they were able to do with whatever it took to create those creatures was amazing. And I think it really lent itself to kind of this isolated, like being isolated was also very important for this film as well. And Carpenter takes these small spaces, these isolated places, and really uses them to full effect in a lot of his films, and probably some more we will be talking about in a little bit. So no, I'm with you. And I was in a very safe space. I was working. I was sitting in the daylight. I had all the lights on in my apartment, just wasting energy, watching the film and not having to focus so intently. I granted I knew what was going on, but I was not as susceptible to the jump scares and the terrifyingness.
It can be very, very scary. Like you said, the big thing on there is the isolation of it all. Right. And how much I think that part of the story is what makes it even more scary than the creature itself. Like the practical effects are terrifying, but it's you can't trust anybody who's been alone with this, who's done that. And that's where it gets you. And that's where I think Carpenter just thrives in his storytelling.
Yeah, I'm with you. What is your favorite film?
The favorite one in this household is very clearly Big Trouble in Little China.
Let's say, for the listeners, there's a poster right behind her head of the Big Trouble in Little China film.
And there's another one to my left. So we have a couple around here. It's the one movie. It's so funny. I love telling the story. When my husband and I first started dating and we did the Facebook adding each other as friends, he had a picture of Kurt Russell in a movie from the 80s. And it was the picture of him after he had just gotten kissed by Kim Cattrall and his lips are all red. And he's just kind of standing there. And I knew there were two movies that I knew Kurt Russell was in that was like 70s, 80s. It was either going to be Big Trouble in Little China or Escape from New York. But I knew in Escape from New York, he had the eye patch. So very coolly, I sent him a text message. I go, oh, Big Trouble in Little China fan, huh? Me too. I had never
Liar.
seen it.
Liar.
Never had seen it.
Again, we here at the Fancast at 4 podcast promote honesty, listeners, but this is still a cute story so far. Please continue.
I know, 10 years later, he's still with me, so... He learned very quickly, though, that I had not seen it and made sure that we watched it together after we had already started dating. But threw that out there like I knew what I was talking about, and it sounded really good. But yeah, again, it goes back to the really fun practical effects that he's able to do, the storytelling that he's able to do. Kurt Russell is just phenomenal in this movie. Yeah. We're big Russell stans in this house. Kurt, the entire Wyatt, his son, who looks just like him.
Yeah, no kidding.
If you do oh my God, when you do I pulled up a picture of a still of Kurt from The Thing next and put it next to Wyatt from when he was all bushied in with his beard and everything in Falcon and the Winter Soldier at first, and you put them side by identical. It's insane.
Oh yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy. So question. It like the one thing I love about movies is that there could be a bad movie you love just because of the experience based around it. Feel free to lie if you need to for your relationship, but is your personal love for the film more inherent to the movie itself, or what led to your and your now husband's relationship? What makes it a stronger attachment to this film?
I think it's a little bit of both. I think because I saw it so many years past it when it was its big kind of flop. Like this was Big Trouble in Little China was kind of Carpenter's blank check movie. Yeah. When you think about it, because he had done Halloween, he had done The Fog, he had gotten a little bit of following with The Thing, and then Escape from New York. And then we got into, he had a few other things in between. But by the time he was able to do Big Trouble in Little China, that was like this was like the one, okay, go crazy. And he did. And it was not as successful. But it's a fun movie. And I think having an understanding and a respect for Carpenter now, rather than earlier on in life, I enjoy it a lot more for what it is, knowing what I'm getting. And how much it means to it's one of the movies in this house that when we're just cleaning or we're doing stuff around the house, we throw it on in the background and pop in, laugh at a joke, and then go back to what we're doing because it's so beloved. Or we will sit down with the popcorn and watch it for a night in.
Well, maybe this is a callback. I've never seen it.
What? Just kidding.
I ran out of it. Was on my list to try and catch this week, but between all the other things I wanted to try and watch, it did not make the cut. But I have much intention of getting to it at some point. But I felt bad because I did actually know your love for it. Yeah,
it's a fun one. You'll have a good time. You'll have a good time with it. One of my other favorite parts, though, with Carpenter is his team up with Donald Pleasence. And I feel like it would be remiss of me to not mention an honorable mention of The Prince of Darkness, which is his final team up with Donald Pleasence, and how Donald Pleasence just goes ham. It is a terrible movie. Not in my top 5, but Donald Pleasence's performance in it, S tier.
It's more of a dishonorable mention.
Yeah.
From my list, I'm not going to dive too deep. We did a lot of them. We have some crossover, but I do a few things I want to mention. The first one is, or I guess number 4 too. I was a little surprised that Halloween is also my number 4. And I think we discussed that pretty at length, but one thing we didn't quite touch on was Jamie Lee Curtis kind of being the foundation for the final girl too in a lot of future movies as well. I think she is the cornerstone, kind of what people look to when you have that trope in horror movies, because I mean she just does a great job at it, and she's still doing it today. She's still getting back into Laurie Strode now. So I will admit I've never seen another Halloween movie outside of the first one, but it sounds like people are enjoying what has been happening for the most part.
The latest two have been fun. This last one, without like giving too much away, but it's just Michael going ham on people, like just absurdity. There's my dogs.
Dogs are welcome. We here at the Fancast at 4 podcast are pro dog.
But yeah, no, the Halloween kills is just insane, and they just let the crazy fly with
just
that one. Just, yeah.
The other one, They Live, I really don't have any more to say on They Live as my number 3. I think we pretty much said what needed to be said regarding
It's
it.
such a fun movie. It's so fun.
The Thing is my number 2. Again, just because of, I think it may have jumped up if it weren't for my predisposition to, or my averseness to horror. But my number 1 is actually Escape from New York. One of the ones I did watch this week. I think I like it more for the concept than the execution. I think Snake Plissken is a fantastic character. I think Kurt Russell does a really great job in the role as this scumbag anti-hero who's just trying to look out for himself. But in the end, when the president,
alert, people.
Yeah, right. Spoiler alert, people. Yeah, thank you. When the president doesn't acknowledge all the people that helped him escape, that and kind of where Snake Plissken's priorities lie, I think that really fleshed out him as a character and really, really sold the movie to me. I thought it was a fun movie, a lot of interesting characters. I've never seen Escape from LA. I was told it's not worth my time.
I honestly, I mean, I'm going to tell you to go and see it because the absurdity that is Escape from LA is its own beast. There's a great Bruce Campbell cameo in it. That's wonderful. But it's kind of like one of those things like, is it necessary in someone's filmography? No, but it's almost like you have to see it just to
like watching a car
revel
crash.
Yeah, exactly. It's the train wreck. You just can't look away from it.
Well,
like the surfing through downtown LA scene, wild.
Well, you're saying these things like I know, but I don't. Yeah. But now I kind of want to.
You should. It's the completionist in me for the most part.
Okay, that's fair.
That I've like you, and it's fun because it's great. Kurt Russell. You're getting the exact same Snake that you had in Escape from New York. It's not any different from that. He plays it perfectly to a T again. It's not over the top. It's a fun one. It's a fun movie that's going to be terrible that you just might have to suffer through for a little bit.
Sounds like Barney agrees.
Yes, he does.
Okay, well, so now that we've addressed our favorite films, now it's time to get into the meat of the podcast and do our fantastic castings. So as this works, each of us are going to go through our whole lists and we're not going to alternate anymore. So with that said, Allison, who is your cast for a John Carpenter Fantastic Four film?
Well, to start off, we're going to go with my Victor Von Doom. And for this role, I chose to go with the very talented Sam Neill.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and we'll see when you'll see when we get there why I went with him. But he was in The Mouth of Madness, along with Memoirs of an Invisible Man, which is one you just do not have to see. Don't worry about that one.
What about Sam Neill makes him a Dr. Doom?
Because he's a very distinguished gentleman. And with the way that I'm planning to pitch this, I wanted my Dr. Doom to be a little bit older and a little bit more intellectual, I guess, is the way that I would.
My guess is, just based on the filmography we have to work with, both of our casts are going to be a little on the older side. So no, that doesn't surprise me that we are both probably going to be going with older casts here. But I mean, Sam Neill's great. I love Sam Neill. Jurassic Park, Hunt for the Wilder People, many other things, but most famously for Jurassic Park, certainly.
Mm-hmm. And that's what's one of those things where In the Mouth of Madness gets forgotten a lot because it came out, I want to say either the year before or the year right after Jurassic Park. I think it was after Jurassic Park that In the Mouth of Madness came out, and he was fantastic in The Mouth of Madness. It was such a fantastic role, and it was such a good movie.
Saying the word fantastic here.
I know. We're just gonna keep going with it. So I feel like if you've seen, for people who have seen that, and then with his character in Jurassic Park, but more so based off of how he was in The Mouth of Madness, is why I pulled for him to be my Dr. Doom.
Who's your next character?
So next up for Reed Richards, I chose Tom Atkins, who plays Nick Castle in The Fog across from Jamie Lee Curtis. I did this one because he's already had the leading man potential of fighting zombie pirates.
I mean, what more
do you
need on your resume?
Exactly. Exactly. So yeah, I figured he already has hero potential. He saved the day with one film about the undead. So why not cast him as the seminal Reed Richards where he can still come in to save the day?
Yeah, and so yeah, he showed up in The Fog, like you said. He was also in Escape from New York, I believe, in a smaller role. So yeah, I mean, great to see that you are picking someone who has a little bit of more experience with Carpenter as well. Fog is not one I have seen, I will admit as well, but I trust you as a Carpenter expert, at least relative to me. I think that sounds like a great choice.
The important thing about The Fog and why that's a fun movie is you get Jamie Lee Curtis and her mom.
Oh,
Janet Leigh acting together in that. So that was, I believe The Fog came out before Halloween. So that's our first meeting of Jamie Lee Curtis in starting her whole Scream Queen role in the Carpenter verse. But yeah, you get Jamie and Janet Leigh.
Halloween, I mean, I don't know when it was filmed. Halloween was released before The Fog.
Yeah, so it's Halloween first and then The Fog. Yeah. That's right. So she's already built this. So she's building her Scream Queen. So I think it's really fun because Janet Leigh was one of the original Scream Queens with her Hitchcock days. And so it's really fun to watch the two of them together.
No, great.
For that one.
Like I said, I trust you. I'm not 100% familiar with him as an actor, but I... again, zombie pirates. What more do you need?
Zombie pirates. What more do you want? Yeah. Nice. Next up for my Sue Storm, we have the wonderful, lovely Karen Allen.
Yeah.
Who people know from mostly know from Indiana Jones.
Right.
But she starred alongside Jeff Bridges in Starman.
Right.
Which is actually one of the longer Carpenter films. Mm-hmm. But I just think she has fantastic leading lady potential. She's absolutely wonderful in Starman with her story and her character arc in it. And I feel like she is that kind of calm rapport and demeanor that you would need to go opposite your Reed Richards, especially if they're going to be together.
Yeah, she's no nonsense either. Like, especially as Marion Ravenwood in the Indiana Jones films, she will tell you what she thinks. She will not take any BS. No, I think Karen Allen's a great choice. No, and I'm excited to see her pitch, to see what her role is in here, because Samuel, are the two actors and actresses I'm most familiar with. But I also feel like she never broke out like she should. She's been in things, she's worked, but she was almost just as compelling in some ways as a Harrison Ford in Indiana Jones.
Right.
And where he launched into the stratosphere, she just kept to the clouds.
I agree. Well, maybe this movie is what maybe the MCU will hear, gods will hear.
Finally get her due after.
Exactly. Next up for her little brother, Johnny Storm, I went with John Stockwell, who's also not incredibly well known. His big performance with Carpenter was Christine, which is another fantastically fun yet scary film, it's based off of a Stephen King book,
right?
Which is, why I think King and Carpenter just match up so well based off of this movie.
Light and jaunty is how I'd probably describe.
Yeah. So and for Johnny Storm with using John Stockwell, in Christine, he plays the jock and the kind of the popular kid. And that's kind of how I see my Johnny Storm in this, is he's younger, real quick-witted, kind of fast on his feet situation. So it just felt like a good fit.
Well, looking at his filmography, there's things I recognize, like, oh, it's that guy. The one thing that I most remember him from is the beginning of Top Gun. He was Cougar, the pilot who was struggling, and Maverick had to help him get to the ship at the end, or at the beginning. So that's where I most recognize him. And I see it. Like, if you can play a pilot, a jet pilot, you can certainly be Johnny Storm. And among all these other stuff that you had mentioned, makes sense to me. I buy it.
Yeah. And then he gets into directing later on in his career with directing Crazy Beautiful, Blue Crush. So he's still doing stuff.
Right.
But at this time, a little bit of a relative kind of unknown.
Yeah. And so you're directing all this stuff. Why not jump into the Marvel universe?
Exactly.
Okay, last but not least, your Ben Grimm the Thing.
So my Ben Grimm the Thing, I kind of see my Ben Grimm as He's, again, a no nonsense, bit of an attitude, hothead, like real quick to react. And so for my Ben Grimm, I went with Keith David.
Wonderful choice.
Yeah.
I dig it.
Yeah. Can you dig it? I love the Warriors. But yeah, I figured, especially with one of the most epic scenes in They Live is the fight between him and Roddy Piper. And especially when just trying to get him to put on the sunglasses and they are just going to town. And like, that's how I think of my Ben Grimm within this Carpenter verse, is kind of like the muscle behind everything. So that's why I feel like Keith David is such a good muscle. And I went back and forth between him and Roddy Piper, but I feel like Keith David just made much more sense.
Keith David is a great choice. I mean, just the voice alone. It's so recognizable. You know, when you hear it, you know it's Keith David. But when you're playing this big bulking rock creature, it seems very appropriate to have a Keith David voice, a Ben Grimm. One of my favorite moments that just recently watched was at the end of The Thing, where him as Childs and Russell as McCready are sitting there, and the stuff just blew up, and what do we do now? As they're sitting there in the freezing cold, and McCready's like, why don't we just sit here and wait a while, see what happens? Like they both know they're going to probably freeze to death, but there's like,
exactly,
they've realized that them not trusting each other isn't worth it anymore. And I think it's just a great moment that both he and Kurt Russell were able to share at the end of the movie. Long story short, I think great pick. Never wrong casting Keith David.
For sure. Thanks.
You're welcome. Okay, well, wonderful list. No crossover with my list.
Okay.
That's something I try and do. Some inside baseball listeners, I do get the cast list ahead of time, but I don't get the pitches, so I never know what the pitch is ahead of time. But I try and avoid crossover when it comes to the casting.
One of the reasons why I loved doing this is because the only actors really within the Carpenterverse that's done an MCU film is Kurt Russell. Right. So while I wanted that to be my go-to for something, it couldn't because of our fun little rules of making it challenging, is not having already been in the MCU. And it's not like he had a little role in the MCU. He was an entire planet. So
with that, we here at the Fancast at 4 promote honesty and value honesty. And honestly, I forgot about Ego as a character. I will admit, I do not like Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2.
It happens.
It is one of my bottom 5 MCU films. And when casting this, I was so excited to pick this actor as my Reed Richards because it seemed too fitting that I put the blinders on. But we here at the Fancast at 4 podcast are being honest, and I'm just going to straight up break the rules this time.
Absolutely.
And for my Reed Richards, I cast the one and only Kurt Russell as Reed Richards.
I love it.
You know, with the multiverse, there are workarounds. I would rather ask for forgiveness than permission. And it's my podcast, so I'm going to forgive myself. The goal is to have fun. So, exactly. Kurt Russell pulling double duty as Ego and as Reed Richards.
There we go.
In my John Carpenter Fantastic Four film. We mentioned it a little bit going through the movie discussions. He was in 1979's Elvis, 1981's Escape from New York, 1982's The Thing, 1986's Big Trouble in Little China, and 1996's Escape from LA. He is John Carpenter's seminal lead action hero. And I felt remiss not having him as the lead action hero in his Fantastic Four movie. I think we've seen him be brave, strategic, one-track mind. I mean, I think Kurt Russell is a chameleon. He can do whatever. One of my favorite roles of his is I kind of actually envision him as Herb Brooks from Miracle, kind of taking that character and using that to play Reed Richards.
Yeah.
So I see that a lot in Kurt Russell, and that's why I wanted to choose him. Again, completely forgetting about Ego.
No, I think it's perfect. And he's so that's who would have been my Reed Richards too.
Thank you for following the rules, Allison.
I take things very seriously, very rule governed my behavior. But no, I think he's a perfect choice for Reed Richards. And let's be honest, Kurt Russell's just cool AF.
Oh yeah,
like he's just the coolest dude on the face of the planet.
Right. Yeah, he and Goldie Hawn got a thing going that it works. He can do Reed Richards. I don't know
Yes.
why I need to convince you. I just need to convince you that I totally did this on accident.
You're fine.
So for my Sue Storm, I went to an actress who had appeared in 1996's Escape from LA and 2001's Ghost of Mars. And I picked this actress because she's just effing cool. I went with Pam Grier as Sue Storm. I love Pam Grier. I think she is just one of the coolest people on the planet.
Yeah.
And she is one, especially if we're going with an older cast now, who will not put up with Reed's BS. And I just see her stepping in, being the smartest one in the room and letting all the boys think they are. I think she is tough. She certainly can do action. I mean, just from her roots coming up, she can certainly do action. So that is why I went with the irreplaceable Pam Grier as.
I love that choice. That's a great choice.
Thank you.
That's absolutely wonderful. I'm a big fan. I'm a big fan of hers in I did a whole Tarantino when the pandemic first hit. So I was watching all the Tarantino movies that I hadn't seen. So I watched one of them being Jackie Brown.
Right. And I think she can take a lot of what she did in like Jackie Brown and throughout her filmography and just take that and kick ass both literally and figuratively.
100%.
I will admit, without spoiling too much, my film is going to focus more heavily on Reed Richards, Ben Grimm, and Dr. Doom, but she and Johnny will play a part and come in eventually, or play a bigger role eventually. But at least for the first third of my film, it's going to focus a little more solely on those other three characters. But with that said, speaking of Johnny Storm, I went with an actor who could certainly play younger brother to Pam Grier's Sue Storm. He appeared in 2001's Ghost of Mars along with Pam Grier, and I went with Ice Cube.
Of course. I love it. Fantastic.
Thank you. And a lot of this is actually based off of his work in the Jump Street movies. I wouldn't say I've been the biggest Ice Cube fan, but I think he is great in those movies. And really, he's playing Ice Cube. He's going to be Johnny Storm. Yeah. Ice Cube just kind of being Johnny Storm with his wisecracks, his hot-headedness, literally and again figuratively. I can see him yelling "Flame on" in his Ice Cube tone, and I'll get to more of it in my pitch. But I think just also the idea of him being the younger brother to a Pam Grier Sue Storm made sense to me, looking through the actors and actresses I was choosing between.
I love it. That's good. That's a good one.
This may be a curveball, but for my Ben Grimm, it's actually going to be Benjamina Grimm in this film.
Okay. I love it.
You can still go by Ben. But I had to cast this actress in John Carpenter. I see the smile on your face. I think you know where I'm going. She appeared in 1978's Halloween, 1980's The Fog, and lends her voice briefly in 1981's Escape from New York. I went with Laurie Strode herself, Jamie Lee Curtis.
I love that. She's the computer in Escape from New York. So one thing I do try and do, sometimes more successfully than others, and clearly I am a stickler for the rules in this show, is go with someone who is Jewish, has Jewish roots, has played Jewish before, and as the daughter of Tony Curtis, a very famous Jewish entertainer. That is why I wanted to go with her as Ben Grimm or Benjamina Grimm. That's great. I think that's awesome. And I think that it again ties into that very strong personality that she brings and that fighter that she has within her to go toe to toe with the Michael Myers or with zombie pirates. And so I think that is incredible choice. And to that point, she's not one that is going to shy away from weird. She's done all the Halloween movies, past, present, future. She even at in her 70s, she will still kick ass. I mean, if listeners, you have not seen Everything Everywhere All at Once, starring Michelle Yeoh, she's still kicking ass in that movie. And it is a weird effing movie that you all should see. It is arguably my favorite of the year so far. So go see that, and it'll show you why she certainly could and would do Ben Grimm.
and could be this rock monster creature and
Mm-hmm.
do very well and play both the tough, the badass, the hot-headed, the sympathetic, all that is encompassing in Ben Grimm. So that, and again, because my film will be focusing more on Reed Richards, Ben Grimm, and Dr. Doom, who I will talk about shortly, I really wanted to go with two actors that are seminally associated with John Carpenter.
I love it. That's perfect. That's so good. That's a fun cast. I'm excited for your pitch.
So I hope you like my Dr. Doom, because for this character, I actually cast two people.
Okay.
So for Dr. Doom, for the body of Dr. Doom, I have cast this actor who was in 1974's Dark Star, 1978's Halloween, and he was in an uncredited role in 1981's Escape from New York. He also has a major role in writing the Escape films and other films, including the movie Hook. So for the physical body of Dr. Doom, I went with Nick Castle.
Okay.
So for those, he played the body of Mike Myers in the original Halloween film. And I believe he's done it a couple other times, but those weren't directed by John Carpenter.
Yeah.
So he certainly can play menacing. And that is what I want for this film that I'm pitching. He just needs to be this menacing creature in a scary metal mask. And who better to do it than the guy who played Michael Myers, at least the body of Michael Myers. So that is why I went with Nick Castle. But for the voice, I went with someone who has certainly done voices of evil before. He was in 1995's Village of the Damned. I went with Luke Skywalker, the Joker himself, Mark Hamill.
That's good. I love it.
You. So again, I don't think I could have done a better job if I tried, just going with the physical body of Doom and the voice of Doom, with one of the more menacing, just silent creatures paired with one of the most menacing voice acting voices with him as the Joker and many other things in Mark Hamill. Who doesn't want to cast Mark Hamill as a voice actor?
You are so right. You are so right.
I was very proud of myself because I actually, like Dr. Doom, I will admit, it took to today to get this down. I wasn't going to cast Jamie Lee Curtis. I was going to actually have Mark Hamill just voicing Ben Grimm.
Okay.
I'm like, that just doesn't feel right. And then I discovered, okay, Jamie Lee Curtis. I actually had Bruce Campbell for a time cast as Doom, just straight up cast as Doom.
That's great.
That could work, but I feel like it would get into more campy range, and that's not quite what I wanted with this movie. And then just the light bulb popped off. I'm like, here we go. Nick Castle, Mark Hamill. Perfect.
That's so good. That's so smart. It's like your own, it's your own Darth Vader of the body of the James Earl Jones doing
right. Exactly. Yeah, that was the idea. That was the idea. So hopefully that makes up for my cheating earlier. Hopefully you listeners like this idea so much that you forgot, like I forgot, that I broke the rules.
Like a lot of people forgot about ego. It's fine.
Yeah, as they should. My eyes are rolling very far into the back of my head if you cannot see this. Okay, well, we have our casts. Both great lists, if I do say so myself. But now it's time to get into our pitches, what these actors in these roles will be doing. But before, Allison, I let you deep dive into your movie, I have a couple questions for you.
Okay.
First, is your film an origin film?
Yes.
Oh, interesting. I'm surprised.
But yes, kind of. You'll see.
I am surprised. In a good way. I'm surprised in a good way. Second, is it part of the MCU?
No, it is not.
Again, not surprised. Not surprised there. But okay, great. With that said, what is your pitch?
Okay. So the reason mine I say is an origin story is because I'm going against the rules, and I'm pretending that my the film that I am pitching is during the heyday 70s to 80s Carpenter when this movie is being made, which is why I have who I have, and it makes sense. So we're looking at like early 80s vibe Carpenter because I like to time travel, and in the multiverse you can time, so maybe it is an MCU. I don't know. We're just going with it.
Right. Multiverse makes everything part of the MCU in one way.
Exactly. So we open up, it's a dark night. You got your classic Carpenter score going with something ominous and eerie. And we come in and we see somebody in the dark and they're just digging and they're digging. And we're not sure who it is. And then as he keeps going, all of a sudden you hear a shovel hit something. and the camera pans around. You see this face lift something up, and it's Sam Neill as Dr. Doom, and he pulls an artifact from the dirt, and he just puts a sinister smile that just comes across his face, and we get our title card of Fantastic Four. As cut to the next morning, we see our Reed Richards. He's already married to Sue Storms at this point, but there's still no powers. He's a professor, and he's waking up next to his wife as they start to get ready for their day. He's a physics professor at a university. And while they're there having their morning banter and their morning coffee, Sue's younger brother, Johnny, runs in to grab breakfast. And the only reason he is there is because he is attending classes at the university they work at that they got him into. But he probably shouldn't be there because he's a party boy. So they do their morning routine and then start walking to class. On their way, Reed runs into Dr. Von Doom, who excitedly exclaims to him that he found the missing artifact needed to create the machine that he has been trying to build to speak to the dead. Reed, who is absolutely terrified of this, begins to try to talk Doom out of it, but there's absolutely no use. Doom is going to go ahead with everything as planned. That night, you see Doom begin his experiments to build this machine to talk to the dead. And in doing so, this is when we get our first glimpse of Ben Grimm, who is one of Reed's buddies, who overheard the conversation that Reed and Doom were having. And so he sneaks in to try to stop the machine and stop this experiment from going forward, which causes an explosion that then completely disfigures Doom, who is so angered by what has happened and seemingly rejected by his peers because of all of this, begins to go into murdering students on campus, then is able to resurrect their bodies to start building his army against the universe. We went very horror themed with this one. We went very Clearly. Halloween, Army of Dark. We went very Prince of Darkness with ours, because I feel like that's the classic Carpenter trope, right?
Yeah.
So I wanted to make sure we hit all of these. Upon realizing what is happening after having to fight some undead students, Reed, Sue, and Ben begin researching how to stop Doom. They find the ancient text that he used and learn the location of this artifact and travel there. And upon reaching the ancient ground, Reed begins the incantation to stop Dr. Doom and his powers. As this is happening, Sue realizes her younger brother Johnny has actually followed them, which causes Reed to lose concentration, causing a backfire. And as everybody comes to, their powers begin to take shape. All of this is going to be good practical effects, because that's what we know with Carpenter films for. So Ben is horribly disfigured as this rock monster. Johnny is now on fire, Sue being invisible, and Reed able to we're gonna get a lot of good body horror with his stretching and everything. Along with all of that, they have awoken a bunch of evil spirits by this disturbance, and that's how we really find how they're able to use all of their powers as they begin to fight their way out and back to freedom and safety. And then we get back to campus, where Doom has amassed a very large army of undead followers at this point. Reed, also using his extreme intellect, learns and memorizes a ritual needed to weaken Doom's power, if only just for a few moments. However, performing this to complete totality could end up causing him to go completely insane. The team tries to talk him out of it, say there's another way to do it, but he refuses. At the last minute, then, Ben knocks his friend out and begins the ritual himself, because he's already disfigured. Why not be insane as well? They're going to lock him up anyway for what he looks like. So let's put a reason behind it. The ritual works as Reed comes back to, and they begin to fight off Doom's army on their way to reach Dr. Doom. Using Johnny's power and the relic that Doom found in the beginning of the film, they are able to burn out what is left of Dr. Doom's soul as it gets sucked back into the relic. But wait, there's more. Upon returning back to where Ben was when he completed the ritual, he has actually taken the form of his original self. As they gather themselves together and begin to walk away and go to dispose of this relic and do what they need to do, in classic Carpenter fashion, the camera freezes on Ben's face with that ominous smile we saw in the beginning from Sam Neill's Dr. Doom. End scene.
Nice. That was great.
Yeah.
No. I mean, I don't really have any notes, comments. I mean, that just seems very appropriate. No, I think that's great. I think that is very straightforward. While there is a lot of subtext in Carpenter film, I think his films are also very straightforward as far as plot goes. He doesn't get convoluted with his plot too many times. And I think that in and of itself feels very Carpenter in how you put that pitch together.
I wanted a 90-minute Fantastic Four film filled with horror. And that's the thing, like, it's going to be horror filled, right? It's going to be like brutal murderings that we're seeing of him with these students in the beginning, and good, fantastic practical effects when it comes to his army of the undead and everyone's superpowers.
I like it. I'm on board with the concept. Would I go watch that? Maybe because it's a Fantastic Four movie. That is the only reason I would go see this movie. But I say that as a concept and in theory. In actuality, maybe not. Just because, again, my proclivity to not want to go see horror movies.
Sure.
But no, well done. It sounds like you had a ton of fun with that. I am thinking it was a great pitch. Really, really well done.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
That was fun.
So for mine is not an origin film. These characters have been established with their powers for some time. They are on the older end, so they are veteran heroes in this universe. Is it part of the MCU? In general, no. But again, the multiverse, I feel like every answer is the multiverse. But in theory, no. It is its own thing so far. Speaking of thing, my movie is called Fantastic Four and the Thing, leading you to believe it is about Ben or Benjamina Grimm, the Thing. It is not. I am ripping off from the movie The Thing. I am cheating again, but this time this was totally on purpose, listeners.
I love it.
The movie starts off with this hand. You're in this Antarctic research base. You see a hand of presumably Victor Von Doom, hit this button saying, "Reed Richards, I send this message from Antarctica telling you that I have achieved my goals. I have accomplished more than you ever could. Don't try and stop me," in a cool, menacing Mark Hamill voice. I'm not going to try and imitate Mark Hamill. But you just see the hand. You do not see the mask, anything. And it goes. That was his plan all along. Because he knows, gloating to Reed Richards can't not do anything about it. Mm-hmm. So Reed Richards takes Benjamina Grimm, I'm just going to call her Ben now, Ben Grimm, the Thing, to this Arctic base to try and see what the hell Dr. Doom. And he's like, "Hey, Sue, hey, Johnny, you stay here in case we might need you later, but the two of us are going to go investigate what the heck's going on." So the two of them go, they arrive to this bloodbath. All of these researchers dead, and they're like, "What's going on? What is going on?" So they prepare themselves to go see. They enter this building, and they just hear through recordings and different voice being thrown, Mark Hamill saying, "I knew you'd come. I knew you'd come. I knew you'd come." And as they walk through hallways, you just see the body of Doom, this metal mask, just menacing going around. And essentially, it is the Thing. That something has taken over, consumed Dr. Doom, and he is now this alien creature haunting Reed Richards and Ben Grimm. And they are trying to find ways to fight it off throughout this film. A lot of suspense, a lot of dark hallways, body horror, practical effects reminiscent of what we get in the original The Thing. In the end, Reed Richards dies and gets assimilated with the Dr. Doom Thing. And it's Ben Grimm who's left as the Thing versus the Thing. Now, where Sue Storm and Johnny come in, they haven't heard from the two of them in hours. There's been no relay. So they go on their own initiative to go see what's going on. Throughout this whole movie, you get flashes to them. Johnny's like, "Something's wrong, we have to go." And Sue's being like, "No, they'd let us know." And Johnny's just chomping at the bit to go because it's Johnny Storm and he's a man of action. Eventually, the two of them do go. There's a time we see them traveling to this Antarctic base, and we see Ben run out and say, "No, no, no, you have to go back. We can't stop this thing." And they see the creature come out and take a chomp out of half of Ben Grimm. And you see, so in the Thing, this thing grows and stretches. We are able to see real Reed Richards stretch out and say, "Fire, kill it with fire." That's the only thing that will stop it. So Johnny, being, the Human Torch, goes in and lets off a big explosion, and it doesn't kill it. And Reed's like, "Bigger, all you've got." So Johnny, sacrificing himself, Reed Richards, what was Doctor Doom and the Thing essentially sacrifices himself, explodes to full capacity, and Sue, being the lone survivor, contains it all within a force shield, and she has to keep it there as he's essentially combusting continuously until this thing finally dies. Once the fire spreads, there is nothing left. It's all been eviscerated. She sits down in the snow, just contemplating what had happened. And that is the end of the movie. Very happy film.
That sounds so good. I go see it. I'm
glad you. I wouldn't. I came up with it. And I wouldn't see it.
That sounds so fun. I love John Carpenter.
A total
so
ripoff. My goal was total ripoff, essentially, of the Thing.
He rips himself off. I mean, literally, Escape from LA to a T is Escape from New York, just with more absurdity.
It just, I felt because we have a character called The Thing, and he has a movie called The Thing, it felt like there was just too much there not to incorporate it.
Yeah.
But I have used a different environment or scenario. I didn't want to. So that is my pitch for...
No, I feel like it falls in greatly with line 2 with what everyone thought was a remake of The Thing that came out in the 2000s.
Right.
When in actuality, at the very end of it, spoiler, I haven't seen it. I just know how it ends.
Right, that's fine.
But spoiler alert, as it ends, you're seeing a de-aged young Kurt Russell come out, so it ends up actually being, this is what happened to the camp that they go to see what's going on. So it actually is it ends up being a prequel versus a remake, which is fun.
So I could flush it out more, but a lot of what the horror movie is silent. There's not I don't want a ton of dialogue. I want this straightforward, like we discussed with your pitch. I don't ever see there being distrust between Reed and Ben. I think they are too close of friends. So we do see kind of a twist on their relationship and how they inherently trust each other. And that may have been to a fault at this point. And that is what led to their demise, rather than their distrust of each other. So that's where I kind of intend on flipping it on its head. And I think it's also interesting seeing, whereas in The Thing, the film, it's all male characters. So I'm interested to see where we typically have Jamie Lee Curtis also as a final girl being the one who also doesn't make it. And it's Pam Grier. I wouldn't call Pam Grier, Sue Storm, a final girl, but she is the last survivor. She's certainly the last survivor because she herself barely faces the threat.
Right.
But one thing I certainly want to include is creepy Mark Hamill voice throughout it, like imitating, like whether it's audio recordings or the monster itself mimicking things. Like I see Mark Hamill not just being one voice in this film either. I see him being multiple different voices, that because Doom knows who the Fantastic Four are, this creature can mess with them further by mimicking other voices as well.
I love it. And yeah, I think the big thing is, like, it's not necessarily the action-packed Marvel movie, right? Where there's constant twists and turns and in the stories. For me, it's with John Carpenter, it's all about the suspense building. And when you talk about peak Carpenter, you're talking, or some of my favorite work that he does, it's that suspense built to the horror, to the jump, to the big thing that's happening. He does it really well with what I think is probably one of his last fantastic movies is In the Mouth of Madness, and then it kind of all goes downhill from there with 90s Carpenter. But your 70s and 80s Carpenter with his suspense building and his anxiety inducing, like he does in Halloween and The Fog and Escape from New York, where it's all fast paced happening in one night kind of thing, is what I love about him. Right. And what I love when he's doing. But also you have Starman, where he's able to tell a beautiful love story on top of it. So he's able to show so many sides of things. But when you're talking about making a Fantastic Four Carpenter film, I don't see it being a fun superhero big box office hit. I see it with those elements of body horror, practical effects, and suspense. So it's more of that story versus the powers and fighting and superhuman stuff.
And the one cool thing I see with especially Kurt Russell still being that lead is with the inherent ability of Reed Richards' powers, I see him while being assimilated or consumed by this creature, he can still stretch and like talk to Ben Grimm and try and help fight this thing off that's consumed him. Like, he's able to stretch out and be his own thing here and there, but then gets pulled back in. And I think that's something cool and inherent you could do, just the nature of Reed Richards' powers as well. And Ben Grimm, who is also very smart character, can't just beat it up. That is not how this thing's going to get stopped. He doesn't get assimilated just because the thing can't break through its rock form, but it ultimately, just due to its mass and size, is able to just break him, both maybe mentally and physically as well. And it ultimately takes a sacrifice from Johnny Storm and the protection or the containment with her force fields of Sue Storm to ultimately end this thing. And I do see a moment where the head outstretched from this creature sees Sue Storm, so they are able to have even an unspoken moment between each other before their demise, to touch on that love story element of these long-standing relationship that these two characters have had. So my goal is not to just ignore that. I still want them to have a moment, but it might just be brief.
That's awesome. I love it. It's a good pitch.
Thank you.
John Carpenter, where are you at? I know you're listening.
Kevin Feige.
Kevin Feige, call him up.
There's an opening. We have some ideas for you. We have the John Carpenter multiverse. We have the M. Night Shyamalan verse. We have the Fast and Furious verse. And you don't have any of them, just give us a call.
All these properties. I'll only take 20% royalties.
Right. Yeah, we're not asking for much.
No.
But, with that said, that is our fan castings, our pitches for the John Carpenter Helms Fantastic Four films. We hope you listeners enjoyed our exploration into this what if scenario. I want to make a special note that the Fancast at 4 podcast is hosted for free on Anchor, and we encourage you, if you have your own podcast idea, to check out Anchor. It's a great resource for getting your idea off the ground. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. If you are in fact listening on YouTube, we would greatly appreciate you hitting that subscribe button and commenting with who your John Carpenter fan cast would be, and what your thought of our lists and pitches are, and which director you might want to see next. I also want to thank Matt Hart and Maddie Gunner for the fantastic theme music they created for us. I certainly want to thank you, Allison, for being our guest today. I hope you had fun.
I had a fantastic time.
Oh, thank you. I'm glad. Where can we find you next?
So next you can find me over on Watt Real Entertainment, typically Monday nights, doing a little show there called Spin from the Real. You will soon be able to hear my voice again on You've Never Seen It. That should be hopefully dropping early this summer. And you can also find me just kind of doing stuff with my boys, Jesse and Sean, over on Flick and Reel, as well on YouTube.
Wonderful.
And you can find me on Twitter at Allison Salamone.
Yes, give her a follow. Thank you again. And that is our show. Thank you all so much for listening. I am your host, Dan Bettenhausen, and on behalf of my guest, Allison Salamone, I hope you all have a fantastic day.